Oftentimes when off-road, the lowest things are what tend to hang you up. Now on the rear axle, typically it's the center section, but also when you're going over things, you have to worry about stuff on the side. And right now, the shock mounts are at 9¼ inches. Now, while that's important, and they're higher than the center section, when you're going over things, around things, you know, sometimes that's what gets hung up. So Van Compass makes a shock bracket that lowers or raises the height of that shock bracket and then reinforces it at the same time. That's what we're going to install today. Stick around for the video if it's something you're interested in watching. All right, with the kit from Van Compass, you get new brackets that are high clearance with a skid plate, and then some interior structural support to reinforce where the sway bar mounts, but really to make that whole package a little bit stronger. So if you do hit something, one, you've got a skid surface for primarily a rock or something like that to go across, but also it just strengthens that whole ensemble. And this is where you have to make a decision of, do you want to modify what you have or do you want to stick to what Mercedes put together? So they do make a bracket that strengthens the shock mount, which is super thin metal anyway, or you can high clearance it like what we're going to do, and we've got to cut off the bottom 2 inches of that. So a couple things that you're going to need to do this job. So 19mm socket takes off the factory Mercedes wheels. An 18mm socket takes off the lower shock bolt, so you can get the shock out of the way. You're going to need a angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. You're going to need a 10mm drill bit because we have to enlarge one of the holes to get the bracket into, and then you're going to have the assorted sockets that you need to kind of get things done, as well as the big T55. So we talked about a set where we have sockets with these star bits on them. So the T55 bit goes into the base, the sway bar bracket, which that has to come off, and also the bump stop. So all that stuff has to come loose so that you can put things together. Again, this kit does require cutting of that lower shock bracket. If you're okay with that, then this kit is for you. So let's get everything prepped. We got a jack stand, we got the tire off, we got the shock off, and we got to make some marks and take a few things loose, and then we'll look at what it's going to take to cut. And also when you're cutting, make sure you have gloves on and safety glasses. Okay, we have removed the bracket that connects to the shock mount. That's a 13mm nut and bolt, and so that's got to come out because we got to enlarge that hole. We also took those T55 pieces out, bolts out from the sway bar and for the bump stop. So that whole assembly comes out, and the bump stop bridge we're going to reuse, and then this is the original factory bracket. You can take a look at the bracket right now and just see this has got a gusset on it, which makes it going to be stronger, and it's a thicker material. So already we're stepping up above where we need to be from a strength standpoint. Those gussets are important, and with the weight of these vans, when you really think about it, if you hit something, the weakest link is what fails. And so when you're looking at keeping your suspension together, if you happen to be off-road or in rocky terrain and you hit a rock with your shock mount, you don't want to rip that thing off. And this is a simple, easy solution to strengthen that up, to also help you get over those rocks if you get to them, but also just to strengthen the entire system. So the next step for us is we have to measure 2 inches off the bottom of that shock bracket, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. All right, so we need to measure 2 inches up from the bottom of the bracket. So that's 2 inches from here up. I just have a square and a grease pencil to do that. So we're just going to hit the bottom of this bracket, line it up with 2 inches. And just make that mark. All right, safety glasses, hearing protection, gloves. We're gonna cut these pieces off. All right, got everything cut off. And we got those holes drilled out. So I sprayed some paint on there. You know, I've got white paint. It's gonna get covered with a bracket. You can use black paint. It's just whatever, just something to protect the metal. So we drilled those holes out to 10 millimeters, and then we cut off those brackets at 2 inches above the bottom. Then we ground everything smooth, cut off any burrs, and so now we'll get ready to fit the new brackets and kind of show you how it all goes together. A couple things we got to do is, before, the emergency brake cable set was below the axle. We have to reroute it up above the axle because this bracket ties into the upper part of this support. The new location puts the bolt from the inside, so these nuts are recessed or welded to the back, so there's enough space for the head of this bolt. And so you'll do that, and it comes out through there. The tab of that bracket fits in right here, and we're just going to install this 13 millimeter nut on the back of it before we push this down on the actual bump stop space. All right, once you get that bolt in for the bracket, you just slide it in like that, and then we'll put that bottom bracket on. So Van Compass includes a spacer that goes in between the ears of the old shock bracket, and that way when you tighten down on that bolt, that you don't compress the bracket together. So this just ensures that you can get the torque on the bracket so it stays placed, but it doesn't crush on the inside. So that's got to go in. So I already got that in on this one. I'll show you. And you can see right there, it just spans the inside so that you don't crush that bracket. So we got that bolt in there. We're going to put those T55 bolts back in for the sway bar, and then we're going to drop the bump stop bracket back on the top, and we'll show you when it's all wrapped up. So also included in the kit is a new bolt for the shock. It also comes with a spacer. This spacer goes toward the differential, and that's just because the reinforced bracket is wider, so we have to take up the space between the lower shock mount and the bracket itself to keep the shock centered in its form of travel. So again, this piece goes toward the inside or closest to the differential or center of the van. All right, we got it all done. You can see kind of how everything kind of comes together and how nice and flat that is. We'll put the tire back on and get the vehicle down on the ground and see what kind of ground clearance we gain from this bracket. Just something to think about. It does shorten the shock throw a little bit by about a couple inches. So you just got to be mindful of that. All right, so it looks like we've gained almost an inch and a half. So originally an inch and a half. We were originally at 9 1/4, and now we're almost at 11. So I call that 10 3/4. So that's right at an inch and a half. So, but look at the profile though, how nice that is. So if you were to hit something, it's gonna slide right off of that and not tear anything up, which I think is really important, because the last thing you want to do is be off the road. You know, say you're out on the desert or on some fire roads, or any of the other 4 service roads through some BLM land and you hit a rock and rip your shock off, I mean, that can really cause some problems. So I think it's a well-worthy investment to have that on there, even if you never need it. All right, that wraps us up. And this is what it looks like with both of them done. I think that looks way better. The process was a little bit harder than I thought it was. It's just because it's a lot of just work to get everything done. Some lessons learned is insert that bushing that spreads that fills the gap between the factory shock mount. Do that before you put the bracket on. There's a slot in the bottom that you can get your fingers up in there, but it's much easier to do it before you put the bracket on. All in all, the process went really well. I'm happy with the result, and I think it's going to keep our shock mount safe if we ever get to a position where we're in some rocky terrain and we're trying to miss a rock primarily for the center section, and so we drive over to the right or to the left. We just know that our shock mount isn't going to get hung on it. So I think it's a value added piece for, I think it's like $340. So you reinforce that shock bracket, you reinforce the bump stop mount, and Van Compass puts a really nice package together. Everything fit just like it was supposed to. I didn't have any trouble at all, and really happy with their products. And we're going to do another Van Compass install. We're putting the auxiliary shock on the front of the van, so that'll probably be the next video. So please be sure to check us out if that's something you're interested in as we continue to do our project. This is Dan from Ramblin' Man Ambition. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something from the video. If you made it this far, give yourself a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.